don't see you anymore. All right, that's a thumbs up. Cool. All right, so we're going to talk about greenhouse automation tonight, how it can help on the farm. And I always like to start from the beginning because automation is just a tool, but the real goal is to help. Should I do that? Yeah, to help you get to the farm you envision. So the perfect farm you'd like to have, that's what I showed there. Imagine what the perfect farm is for you. And often when we talk to folks, like to farmers, what we hear is more that they feel like this. Like something went wrong somewhere, and it's quite normal. Like starting a business is hard, but we want to overcome that. And I hope tonight is going to give you some bits, some pieces that is going to help you move forward. And I like to start with that study that I found of Canadian farmers saying that like together almost 60% of farmers feel somewhere between disengaged on the farm and burned out. And that's a bit of a grim view, but what I like about this story is that also emphasize how being cynical about it is the best way to get towards burning out. So let's focus on the 40% of people that feels engaged on the farm and how we can get there, how we can be there with them. All right, so what's typically get in the way? What gets in the way? Often it boils down to like mental bandwidth, lack of time, and lack of money. And that's what we're going to talk in today, well, this evening, and how automation can help you build the life you envision when you started your farm, or the life you want to have right now on your farm. So how can I'm mostly going to talk about greenhouse automation. There's also like the same concept can apply to other automation. And we have a first message in the chat. You feel seen, yes. Thank you for the engagement, Ramina. Nice. All right, so like I said, I want you guys to be engaged, to participate like Ramina just did. Even if it's not for question, that's really fine. I want that to be a discussion. And to warm you up to that, I put up some questions. So here is kind of what are you here for tonight? What do you hope to learn with this presentation? And we can try to adapt to the needs of everyone because the topic is quite broad. But if we know more about what you like, that will make it more interesting, right? W. So are you here for the knowing more about the benefits of automation? That you can just write one in the chat if you want. Is it how to get started automating either greenhouses, irrigation, or other stuff? Is it more about technical setup details, or what are you here for? All right, so you want to start right with your greenhouse. Any like Julie, Ryan, Paula, Angie? 2 and 3. So how to get started? Technical setup details. Okay. Wasn't expecting to go too much into technical stuff, but please just ask your question as we go when they come.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want to spend money into something that will cost you time later down the road. And there's so many things, like all projects that we start end up like, we see how it can help us, but there's often some maintenance to do and how it can take time. And that's obviously what we want to avoid. 2 and 3 for sure. All right, so the first part was it the next slide? Yeah, okay. So the first part of the presentation was more about what you can get from automation and what you can hope to get. I'm going to try to tell stories about it. And most importantly, we have Luke here, which is a farmer who's using automation. We've been working together. And it's kind of what you can hope for it. And when you have questions, please jump in. This is not very technical because often it really gets technical quickly. And we don't want to just go into like finicky parts. But if you have a question about that, just go ahead. So first part, how to take weekend off, how to create mental bandwidth on the farm. It's the first aspect we want to cover, how you can use automation for that. Then how you can save time on the farm. We estimate around 10 hours a week, can be more than that, especially if you have more like mini greenhouses. And yes, the idea to create time on the farm. And then the third benefit we're going to cover is how to triple your income. And these are kind of bold claim. but the goal, like, it's just an hour and a half, so I cannot promise you you're going to end up there tonight, but the goal is to show you that it's accessible and to give you resources to get there, and also to inspire you to take action by seeing how others are using it. And thank you, Luke, for being here.
Yes, I'm excited.
Cool. So no question session. I want to force you to jump in when you have questions. So anytime, just unmute your microphone, write in the chat. All the answers are good. So second warm-up question. What about these topics? Do you feel good about it?
Yes.
No? Yes, Luke, thanks. Yes. All right. Paola, Romina, and Ryan. Let's dive in. So my name is Guillaume, as Sophie said. I'm the co-founder of Orisha, and we started that as a project to help farmers. I was kind of just getting out of university when we started it, and I wanted to do something interesting with my programming, like computer software engineering skills. So when my partner, Pierre-Alexandre, he was working in a greenhouse and wanted to find some ways to make his job easier, he came to me, and that's how the whole project started. And when we started it, like Orisha, the whole greenhouse automation thing, we developed it as a tool that we expected people to be able to take advantage of. And in Quebec, it was kind of right. That's kind of what happened, because we have a lot of agronomists and experts because of the grants that the government give people in Quebec that help farmers kind of take advantage of the automation and everything. But as we go and when we get to Ontario, like, most folks don't have that chance to have people guiding them on how they can increase their yields in their greenhouse, how they can produce better, how they can be less stressed about it. And so my job kind of changed, shifted from developing tools to more like talking with farmers and try to see how we can help them better by not just having the technology, but building the knowledge around it that could make it as easy as possible to use and to benefit from. And that's kind of part of why I'm here tonight, is to make that whole idea of automating a greenhouse less scary, so that you can use it and benefit from it, as we see most people do in Quebec. Like in Quebec, pretty much everyone has automation in greenhouses, but when we get to Ontario, it's a really different landscape. So we want to make that more friendly and user to get started with. But I'm not alone tonight, and I want Luke to be introduced properly and to give a bit more of his context, of his background, of his story. So Luke, talk to us more about yourself, Terramor Farm, and you gave us some context.
Yes, I'm worried because it's your screen share that I'm not going to come up. Am I up on the screen? Does that matter?
Yeah, it matters, and you are on the screen, at least for me.
Okay, I'm on for you.
It's just whoever's speaking gets put forward.
Okay, sweet. Okay, hello. Great. I'm glad to hear that. I was worried that not that you guys need to see my face, but I thought it would help when it was my time. Okay, sweet. So yes, my name is Luke Sheldrick. I own Terramor Farm with my wife, Dana Moores, and we are heading into our 8th season. We are 45 minutes west of Ottawa, and we serve 3 farmers markets, over 20 restaurants and retail locations, and we float around 100 CSA Veggie Basket members. And we also are in year 3 of doing cut flowers. So we offer that to retail, our CSA, and have gotten into weddings as well. I guess so that's our crew there during a little bit of that was when we were sending off our students back to school, the summer workers. We had a little party, and that's my family, Dana and my 2 children. So, and then I guess we could I forget where we are. I don't want to get ahead, but I don't want to get behind. I guess we should get into what we grow. I mentioned the cut flowers. And of course, we grow a broad array, like many market farmers, of vegetables I would say we do a focus on culinary because of our restaurants. And then that tends to allow us to have informed decisions and what I think is premium quality for our market and CSA and retail as well. So it informs a lot of our decisions. So there's another picture of our farm and our market. And of course, our greenhouses, which is the main focus of sort of why we're here tonight. is focusing on how the greenhouse automation has really helped us to develop our business. And I'm going to get far more into that as we go on. But it, in short, has just really helped us to have more peace of mind, have more freedom to focus on the important things, and also expand our business and see our quality improve across all kinds of avenues. I think we can go to the next slide if there.
Yeah, I was waiting for the sign.
Oh yeah. This is. I'm glad you included this slide. So it's kind of a joke, but kind of serious. Like the potential bias is, of course, that I'm here working with Orisha, but I truly do believe when we were exploring options for automation, I don't know that I would have got it as soon as we did had I not come across Orisha. And also with the research that we did, I'm beyond pleased with that decision because number one, when you're looking on a website or something for a controller, it's the most intimidating thing in the world because you don't really know if it's a third-party sales place, you don't really know who's selling it to you, who's going to help you make that decision of what furnace to get, how you're going to get roll-up sides. There's a lot of questions that can go unanswered. And with Orisha, their customer support and their knowledge of the industry is, in my opinion, unmatched. And so although I'm biased, it's with good reason because I really don't think we'd be where we are without them existing. And I think that people should really explore this opportunity of getting automation and, of course, with them. So biased, but with good reason.
Well, thank you for that, Luke.
Yeah.
Where's my mouse? All right. So, yeah. Third warm-up questions for you in the room. What is the most urgent thing you want to fix on the farm? Because automation, as I said earlier, is a tool, but there's many ways of seeing it. There's many options that are available. I want to know what's the most important for you. Why are you looking into automation? Why are you here tonight? Is it more like with another? Let's go in another direction than earlier. Is it more to learn about like what is your problem basically? Is it your greenhouse that cooks your plants all the time? Are you losing a lot of crops and that creates stress and stuff like that? Is it I said my girlfriend thinks my greenhouse takes too much space in my life. My plants are needy and aren't giving back much, or all of the above, or it can be something else. Like please write in the chat or just take the microphone. Temperature management, 1 and 2. So time and stress. What about you, Jeff? What are you here for? You just arrived. Oh, okay, so the yields, NG. Okay, cool. We have some tips on that. Sick of being tied to the farm. Wow, the chat is not easy to use.
Yeah.
All right.
Those are some nice comments.
Natural next step for me to let go of monitoring thing. All right. Cool. Thank you for your answers. All right, so that gives me an idea, Luke, as well. If you have points that fit with these, I know you have. Please feel free to talk as much as you can. You're the one you're the user. You're the one using it. You know Absolutely. The realities of farmer better than I do, and you have a better English than me. So please take as much space as you want. So let's dive in with the first one, which is how to take real time off, and that goes back to feeling tied to the greenhouse. To your farm for many reasons, and how we can detach you from that. So there's kind of 2 aspects to it. Is kind of all the stress and the feeling of always being on duty, and the second part is the mental bandwidth that kind of runs you down. It's all a question of keeping the battery charged towards the whole season. And there's a meme I found on the internet. I adapted it just a little bit to fit with our market, our domain, which is this one that I find very funny. And as Ramina, you said earlier, I think many people feel seen with that one. And it says that 100 farmers were asked what they do in their spare time, and like 90% didn't understand the question, and 5 didn't know what day it was, because most farmers work maybe not most, but a lot of farmers works every day, and they don't have much spare time, especially when you have a family, like kids behind that. So that's kind of the feeling that many farmers I talk with have. And it comes down to the reality of just when you're trying to juggle with so many things at once, when you're trying to keep track of everything, and you guys are working with like plants. So I don't know how to say that in English, but like things that are alive and they need like constant care. Someone told me it's like a greenhouse, like having a baby, but the baby is never growing up. So you always have to take care of it and you always feel tied to the farm. And that's a problem because you only need to miss it once and you can lose like a bunch of crops, like a few $1,000s. So it only takes once and you get to that place. And these are beans that were growing for 11 weeks. I think they were ready for harvest the next day or the day after that. And just the sides weren't open in time and it just lose the whole thing. So that creates a lot of stress when you know that this can happen. And I know probably all of you have felt it. And Luke, you told me that it happened to you in the past. And
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, in many instances, but one in particular where we were just in our nursery, just the sides were rolled up and the cold air just came through and just hit tomato plants, and it easily could have been managed by automation. So there's just instances like that continuously where you can't humanly get it all the time. And then we also beat ourselves up about that's a bit of the emotional stress I feel that is relieved, is that you beat yourself up about these decisions, but really you're not really at fault because you can't physically be capable of achieving perfection, right? But automation actually, not perfection, but getting us closer. That automation.
You cannot be there all the time.
Yes.
You have to go to the market, and you were telling me about overcast days where you go run some errands and you have to come back when the clouds are just like the sun's going out of the clouds.
Exactly. You see the clouds break and you're like leaving the parking, or you're in the parking lot of the shopping center or whatever. You're like, oh no, here we go. The tomatoes are getting cooked now or whatever. Yeah, there's just no way.
Yeah, so it's kind of the constant place that your greenhouse has to take, or in your mind, that is kind of feeling that you're always on duty. And that's what we want to get rid of, and that's one of the aspects that we can fix quite easily, actually. And one thing you mentioned, Luke, when we were talking about it, was that when you have to always be there, you have to make concessions, you have to make trade-offs with what you can do and what you cannot do, because you just cannot be there all the time. It doesn't make sense. And
Yes.
so we want to reduce that as much as possible. So another example, a farmer was telling me that half of his revenue came from caterpillar tunnels and greenhouses. And when the sun comes out of the cloud, it can get really, really warm really quickly in there. And if you have to have a team dealing with it, then it's kind of stressful thinking, oh, did they forget about it or did they do it? So it's all that space that it takes in your mind that we want to fix. And here, the solution, and maybe some of you already have it, but it's just put a sensor in a greenhouse. And there are many options to do that on the market, like just having a sensor in the greenhouse, in the tunnel, in the caterpillar tunnel. And in the end, most solution you can just have the temperature on your phone. So that helps relieve a lot of stress. And you don't always have to look at the phone, because you can have alerts that will just call you if something goes wrong. So if you can put that at as much places as you can, that's good. So you don't need to always be worrying about it. You can get that out of your head, and you're going to get called if needs to be. And did you have that happen to you, Luke?
I wanted to jump in there and just say, like, the peace of mind, like when we're talking about the bandwidth, the peace of mind that is provided through it is incredible, of course, because it's just the one less thing you have to think of. And we're going to get more into it later. So I'm also cautious to not touch on too many things in advance. That's why I'm a little cautious. But
no worry.
Okay, yeah. The space, like you've touched on, the space in your head when you don't have to worry about whether you have to be running to get the sides rolled up or down, allows for more focus on what you're doing, or more focus throughout the day. And also further, two things that I wanted to touch on with staff is then you're not delegating someone. They're not asking you in advance, oh, does this need to go up right now or does this need to go down? And then two people are distracted. So I'm really looking forward this year to adding the sensor to our Caterpillar tunnel. And I'm considering adding one of my crew's phone numbers so that they get the alert as well. And then, because a big thing last year was like, oh, I always just said, just consider the Caterpillar tunnels the same as the roll-up sides on the greenhouses, which is a good benchmark. So that if they were rolling up, the crew knew that they had to go and do the sides. So that's another benefit to the automation in greenhouses, is you kind of can follow its lead. But I think I'll also get a sensor in one of the cat tunnels, because it's fair to assume they're all the same, and we operate with 4. So I think that's something that it just takes anywhere where you can remove a question, like, operating a team, Guillaume, like that's where you're looking at creating systems like SOPs is frequent questions. Where can you stop the question? Where can you make a solution? And creating systems like this, it removes it from your crew, but it also removes it from ourselves. Like you're not wondering, do I have to roll up the sides right now? Should I roll them down? And we'll get into it later. Also, the time involved in the trips back and forth from doing that.
And that's a part I removed from the presentation, but it's simplifying the operations. One of the things when we started Orisha is we had to try it in a real greenhouse at some point, and when we did it, we realized how messy it is to control the temperature. So we had to figure a way where it would work every day the right way. And we do more than just opening in the morning and closing at night, because we want to keep a consistent temperature throughout the day. And there's many aspects to keep plants, like to increase the income that you can get from a greenhouse by taking care of your plant carefully. So towards what Angie were talking about earlier, if you can produce better, like having a consistent climate, not like always equal, but like having a right climate can help. But figuring out what is the right climate and how to achieve it is quite a pain. Like we went through that and we thought like it makes no sense that farmers have to do it. So we just put that into the box, into the system, so that nobody has to think about it anymore. That's kind of a super SOP, because it's made for you and you don't even have to do it. It's done for you. And about Romina, what you asked, how to connect. If you don't have Wi-Fi near the tunnels, there's really many aspects, and it depends of like different like your context basically on your farm. You said you don't have Wi-Fi near the tunnels. There's many solutions that can fit to you, and that's why I don't want to go too much into details, because I don't want to go into too much like one specific case. But there's many options that we can help with like what Sophie said, that we can use a cell phone with a hotspot in a plan, or we are working right now to develop something that you just won't need to think about anything. Everything would be supplied for you. So that can be another aspect. And if you have Wi-Fi near the tunnels, like I think that it's 400 feet, it's still good, because we use a remote technology that can fit with it. So there's really different options. If that can help you, just call us. And my colleague here is really good at helping figuring out the best solution for you. So I hope it answers a little bit what you were asking. Yeah, there are options, and we can help you with that. That's kind of the whole thing is technology doesn't fix anything. We need humans to help figuring out these questions to how to get set up. And while I'm not going to go into details here, if you call us, we can help you with it. All right, so going back to the presentation, being able to see things on your phone is really good. Being able to get call, like having a call when something happens, so that you don't have to constantly be looking at your phone, is even better. But after that, if you can have sensors in your structures, can you have like the motors that controls the sides? And that's even better. Like Caterpillar tunnels, there's not that many solutions to do that, but all the like high tunnels, greenhouses, you can have these, and it really doesn't make sense not to have it. And I'm going to go into more detail later, but I'm going to give you an example of, do you guys know of FQT Farm or Ferme des Quatre Temps? Like the farm that Jean-Martin Fortier started as a school farm? Yeah, heard of it? Yes. I have a few examples from them that I found very interesting and wanted to share with you. Big fan. And that one was to create space. And Luke, please jump in if you have some input about that. And I asked them like what they like about the system that they have on their farm. They're using Orisha as well, and like one part of it is like the alerts and the automation, and how it helped them create mental space and the impact it had for them. And the answer I got was, it's kind of three things. First thing is like to keep the battery charged the whole season. So like converting the farm into like a, let's say maybe not 9 to 5, but not having like a 27 job, because something can burn in there, something can just freeze, or things like that, because you have someone on duty, like a machine that's there all the time, it's never getting sick, to check it for you. That's one of the big reasons they like it. Second one was it allows them to focus on one thing. And I think that's something that's underrated, because as entrepreneurs, you probably have a lot on your mind all the time. And that's really hard to be effective when you're kind of overwhelmed with new information coming in all the time. And so being able to focus on one thing, not always focusing on many things, that's that's a good plus that you can have. And everything you can systematize or have organized so that you don't need to be constantly thinking about it is a big win. And the last part was for them having alerts and automation taking care of the greenhouse, like for the temperature management that you guys mentioned earlier. It helps make their greenhouse just a one-day job instead of being able to be having to think about it 7 days a week.
I think that's a really big one to touch on, is the appeal of when you said not a 24/7 hour, like 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job. Like you can't, no, yeah, I'm next anyway. Great. But you can't achieve, it's so nice to be done at 5 and you're done at 5. You're not, especially in the summer, or 6, or like say 6 o'clock, 5 or 6 at night. You're not wondering what time you have to go back out to roll the sides down or up, or you can actually just check out and be done, which is phenomenal.
Yeah, and what do you think about your stress level? Because yesterday when we were talking, trying to prepare for the presentation, you said something that kind of stuck to me, and I wanted to put in there. It's that how you felt stressed about like having to make trade-offs between being there all the time, which is not realistic, and sacrificing your crops sometimes, because you cannot be perfect, right? And that kind of being able, like automating your greenhouse, helps you kind of shift that stress towards being more confident and being confident to start new project, let's say. Can you tell more?
Absolutely,
more about
I think I think that's a good segue. The long and short of it is that it does offer us more confidence in our product, and then also confidence and time to focus on bigger issues. The more you can get away from the small things that you have to worry about throughout the day, I think it leaves you more, as we said, mental bandwidth to sort of focus on the bigger picture. And with that, you can see me in our nursery there. We actually, since getting Orisha, we've started to do a plant sale in the spring, which I don't think I would have had the confidence to do prior to. And that's just as much in terms of time day to day, but also in our product. So last year was our first year doing it, and it was an incredible success. And then now we've brought it online, like we're doing pre-sales online and seeing a lot of interest. So that automation, the addition of sort of a controlled environment where we know our seedlings are getting exactly the care that they need, has given us that sort of ability to factor that in. And I don't know if I'll get a chance to say this later, so I wanted to touch on, like, again, the nursery is just one place. And if you're in market gardening, it's like 85% of your crops are coming from this space. And then the other 10% is in the greenhouses. So adding automation really is benefiting a huge portion of your yields, because if you're experienced with growing in your nursery, transplanting out in the field, you know that the quality of your transplants is extremely important in their potential yields. And when you're putting out a healthy transplant, you know that there's going to be, yeah, it feels good too. So that's a huge one for us.
Thank you, Luke. And there's like the last benefit we're going to cover is the yields and the quality of all that. So you can even talk about it more later.
Okay, cool. I'm just like, I'm really nervous I don't remember the slide, so I want to be sure that I'm engaged, but I also don't want to give away too much. So
oh, it's fine. We can just skip the slide later. But
yeah, or maybe I'll say it again.
Yeah, or you can say it again, because I think it's important, because a few weeks ago I was giving a talk in Vermont, Nova, Vermont, and someone told me, oh, automation is something we always knew we should do, but we never took the time to do it because it's a project, and they're kind of, we never have time, right, to do everything we want. And he said, like, once you see the value of it, then you just find the time to do it. And I thought it was interesting because for me, as someone who lives in Quebec, and I have automation all around me, which is kind of an obvious solution for everyone here, like seeing people saying, oh, we don't see the value in what it can bring us. And we used to, like at Orisha, we used to say, oh, it saves you time, it helps increase your yields and save on energy costs. But the reality is really different from one place to another. And I feel like it's not connecting to people that much. So focusing on like how it helped you, Luke, on your farm, I think it's really interesting, because that's what helped in the past. Like most farmers say, okay, now I want to automate because I saw someone who used it and I saw how it can apply to me. So the big part of the presentation is on the benefits and how it can impact you on your farm, to make you see if it's worth your time investing and your money investing in it. If you have questions more technical, jump in, as I said, but we're going to talk a lot about the benefits here. So the first one was, the first one was to be able to take some time off. So being able to, we didn't cover the bit about the weekends and having like real night, like your evenings. But a lot of people have told me, like, when you're done at the end of the day, like let's say at 5 or something, you don't need to think about your greenhouse anymore. Even if the sun is not down, you know that your day is done for real. And that was something that a lot of people told me that has an impact for them, because they can focus on their kid, they can focus on just resting for the next day. And that's a part, because a lot of farmers we talk to, they just work all the time. They're always kind of, the brain is always at work, so they don't have the energy to go through the season. Like comes August and everything is going very fast and you're already tired of July and stuff. So being able to keep your batteries on the whole season, you need to take breaks. And that's what one of the big benefits that it can bring. So like the first reason why people should automate, I say, is to stay sane. It's for your mental health before making money, before saving time, just to keep you sane the whole season. So that was the first benefit. Second benefits is now we're getting to saving time. And like about 10 hours a week can make sense if you don't have to manage your temperature anymore, if you don't have to think about irrigation anymore. And I'm going to tell you why in this section. Because there's a lot of things, like when you think about what you're doing in a day and how much time, and then you look at how much time it took you, there's often a big mismatch between the two, because it's not that much the task that we do, but it's often all the interruptions that come to it and all the time that we put in that don't pan out in the end. And here, that's two things that you can address using automation. And I showed you that picture earlier of like when you lose a crop. And that's something that pretty much everyone I talk to have happened way too often, that more often than we like. And that's like, there's a loss of money that we can see there, but there's also a lot of time that's been invested to get that crops like to 2 days prior to harvest burning like that. So all the time that you put in a crop that doesn't pan out the way it was intended to, that's a lot of time you wasted there. Because if everything you plant grows fantastically, then you can do maybe twice as less. You can do less basically, and you can save on seeding, on transplanting, on maybe weeding, maybe not in the greenhouse there, but it's where you can save time. And almost all the time you need to recover for something like this, then you need to go find somewhere where you can buy the peas, or you need to just get that out of the greenhouse. So you need to recover from that, and that's a lot of time that you don't want to spend because it doesn't bring value to your customers. So it doesn't bring you money. So you're just working for nothing, and that's kind of a abstract idea of the time. And for those of you who know about the lean farm, the whole idea of like lean management is how we can stay in the flow so that we always work on where we create value. And that's on the long run, that's where you're going to have the biggest impact, because saving 2 minutes here, saving 2 minutes there, it's not that much where you can just save the whole time you spend on a crop that you didn't manage to sell. So we want to make sure that everything you grow, you get the most out of it. So that's the first way you can save time, is by not working for nothing. Be it for because you're burning them, because they're freezing, because you have diseases, all that kind of have an impact of the time you put in that doesn't bring you back what you should have. And then the second one that Luke really liked, I think, was that interruptions are killing efficiencies during the day. And I'm going to show it, and then I'm going to pass you the ball, Luke. So
yeah, that's good.
Yeah, okay. So I wanted to show it like kind of visually because that's how I got to see where like all the time we spend shifting tasks from one task to another, how it impacts at the end of the day. And the idea here is that you have, like, let's say you plan for one day, you have 4 jobs of 2 hours for your day, and you say, okay, so we're gonna do those 4 jobs, and the day's gonna be done. But then one thing that we often forget as human is that there's kind of time we need to get set up for the task. So finding the right tools, you want them to be easy to find, walking to where you need to work, figuring out with other people what you will do and how you share the task. So these are all those black lines there, which is the context switch or the setup time. But then the true drama comes when you have these interruptions, which are the red lines on the third row. And the interruptions are what adds all these context switch time. So if we're talking about roll-ups, if we're talking about irrigation valves, you have to do that many times in a day, especially in spring on overcast days and stuff like that. But still, there's a lot of things that you have to keep in mind first. And then second, you have to walk back and forth to the greenhouse, preventing you to do actual effective work. And this is just a representation, but still it gives you an idea of how much time you lose by having to do these tasks that you don't bring that much value, and you can have a machine do it like for way cheaper than you do, because your time, especially as the farmer, like the owner of the farm, is most likely the most valuable time on the farm. So you don't want to be constantly thinking about that, because that's going to make you mentally overwhelmed maybe, and it's hard to take decision in that time. And then secondly, if you're always walking back and forth, you're losing a lot of time not focusing on what you should actually do. And when I was saying that, Luke, you were mentioning that for you, like you saw another aspect of it, like of walking around on the farm that takes you time that you would like to save. Yeah.
Well, it is really similar to this, but it's just, we were just kind of laughing about it because I said, even if you have great focus and you're very attentive, I think any farmer can relate to how costly it can be needing to walk across the farm at any point in the day, because you see X, Y, and Z. And I think we all want to keep our trips across the farm limited when we're trying to focus on a task, because all of a sudden I'm weeding a blade of grass over here for 5 minutes, or I get asked a question by someone and I'm drawn into another task, and all of a sudden that 5-minute walk to the greenhouse turns into 30 minutes and you forgot what you were even doing. So anytime I think we can stay focused is good. And then I would add also, like, the interruption of if you have a crew, again, I'll tie back to that. It's the delegating as well, like someone radioing to see, does it need to be rolled up, or or it's interrupting their tasks as well. So it's then interrupting 2 people myself and them as well.
Yeah, and there's already so many good opportunities to be interrupted. You don't, if you can save a few, that you're gonna be well off. And
Yeah.
also, how many times a day do you irrigate the greenhouse?
Myself, yeah, we're doing three to four pulses on sunny days, and then it changes due to the weather, and thankfully to Orisha for that. Yeah.
And how many times were you going to the side roll-ups to adjust the side roll-ups during a typical spring day?
Spring, it could be.
I know it's the worst.
That's what's so funny, and that's what we were talking about. Are you going to aim for perfection and walk there and back every time a sun comes out from a cloud? It's almost impossible to because there really are in the spring and the fall and even sometimes in the summer, they're going up and down, not consistently, but it would be humanly impossible to achieve what they require. And then, yeah, don't get us into dehumidification cycles. Like, you know what I mean? Like which I know I saw someone mention they're interested in extending the life of their tomatoes. They're tired of seeing them fail. Like, it's impossible, literally impossible to manually achieve getting the environment to prevent them from getting too humid and those diseases coming. It's impossible. Sorry, I know that's a little off, but then the amount would be so many times if I was like striving for perfection. So inevitably you sacrifice quality because you're not going to go back and forth, and even attempting to, you're still probably doing it 5 times a day, 6 times a day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's I think that defines it well. And
yeah,
like, you mentioned like the quality. We're gonna go back. We're gonna circle back to that later about the dehumidification and everything. So
yeah,
it's just all the time, all the interruption you can have, you can save, the better you're gonna be. And the two biggest thing here, I think, is the irrigation and the roll-up size. And irrigation can be in the greenhouse, can be in the fields. If you can get rid of all that, that's going to be already a lot of time. And for all those who are not living on the farm, like Sophie, you said earlier, then that's a big change, because you don't need to go during the weekend necessarily. You don't need to just take your car to drive to the farm to close the roll-ups and stuff like that. So that can have a huge impact, even more if you're not living on a farm. And there's many things you can automate, but I'm going to try to focus on like the first step, where you can have like the low-hanging fruits that you can get. And roll-ups and irrigation, I think, are the two easiest to get rid of.
Can I interrupt to answer the question in the and you might have an answer for this too, Guillaume.
Yeah, go ahead.
You're not wrong, because the place where we have our nursery is actually our first greenhouse. So ours is also not, like, I would prefer to also have wiggle wire in where our seams are on our roll-up sides. Like, I would prefer that, but I sacrifice the minor heat loss for the peace of mind of automation. But then also on our second greenhouse, which I will be like changing our original greenhouse, which was built 3 years before our second one. What you want, I think, would answer your question, is like skirts that come up, so that then the plastic sides can hang down lower and have a better seal. Like, the weight of the roll-up side sort of keeps a nice seal there. Does that answer your question, Angie?
Gonna let her answer, and then I can 100%. And there's as you mentioned, Luke, there's some like skirt, like knee-high pulley that you can put at the bottom of the of your side, your wall. But there's also you can put pulley on both ends that just cover the first the first space between the two arches.
Yes.
So that can add a little bit more insulation. But to be honest, if you're not heating, if you're heating, it's a bit different. But still, if you're not heating, the difference, like the insulation of the greenhouse, it takes a few minutes, and you lose all the heat that you have in the greenhouse. So like for all the time you put in, it would make sense. Yeah, I get a trade-off. I would sometimes make sense. All right, I'm not sure what you want to say there, but like I would say the trade-off between having to do it yourself and like the little energy you can save by putting the pulley every day, I'd say it's not worth it because it's like it takes a few minutes. If you close the greenhouse, it still takes a few minutes to lose all the heat you have in the greenhouse.
Oh, is it unheated? Like, are we talking about an unheated place? That might be
I'm not sure. NG, is it heated? Unheated
unheated.
tunnel.
Unheated for tomatoes. Okay. I would still be doing the roll-up sides automated.
Yeah, and there's also another option which is more hardcore. We don't see it very often, but people put like the skirt at the bottom and even on the side, and you can inflate it, so it creates some kind of bubble. So when the roll-ups falls down, it's kind of it's gonna create a seal that's gonna prevent the air from coming in because like the inflated side, the inflated skirt of the inflated side will just push against the roll-up, and it's gonna kind of cut the air in. But I would argue that like for tomatoes around zero, I'm not as experienced. I'm not sure, but I think the time you put in versus the gain you're gonna get, it's probably not worth it. Uh, but I'm not sure.
If I
You
can,
can,
I would make one more recommendation to Angie. So you forgot to change the automation settings after you wiggle wire the sides shut, and they try to roll up while they're wired. Will the motor stop if there's resistance, or just keep trying to roll up the sides until they tear? Okay. I actually made this error this winter. I forgot to turn off the automation, and there was some snow load on mine. So if anyone follows my Instagram, you saw a post of like a tear in our plastic because it just kept rolling until it finally snapped and rolled all the way up. So Angie, the answer is it will not. The motor is strong and resilient, and it will continue to go. I don't think you'd see much damage because I think it would honestly just pop out the wiggle wires. So that would just, and it would just automatically stop on its own at the top. But you might end up getting some cold tomatoes. But I don't know why I would want to roll up anyway. Maybe the next morning. But I would argue what I would do, Angie, would be add automation. Like I would explore the opportunity of adding Orisha. And if you didn't want to yet do a furnace because it's a big expense, but you just wanted to try the roll-up sides, I would just do it in the main season. I know you're saying you might forget, but my suggestion would be when it's time to be concerned about it being too cold at night and you're going to start wiggle wiring it closed, I would then ditch the concept of using automation and just do it manually during the day.
And when it rolls, it will pop the wiggle wire, and it's gonna probably make some holes in the pulley, but it's not gonna make big damage. So it's not the end of the world. Ideally you don't want that, of course.
No.
But if it happens, it's not that bad either. So I wouldn't stress about that.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I know it might be hard for people to picture what you're describing about this like ground skirt thing around the base that can inflate and sort of help seal between the roll-up wall and the base where you're going to be having more of that heat loss. Do you have like any photos? I've been trying to Google and find something, but there's a lot of
if we hop ahead, sorry, pardon me, Sophie. I think one of my photos further on, if you go ahead, Guillaume has it. The one
Yeah.
later with the two roll-ups.
I have one too, which I think give me a sec.
It can just be hard to picture these things, you know.
We don't have it here.
This one's tricky, Angie, I feel, because it's the end goal should be to be adding heat as well, I believe. And if we're talking about tomatoes in the shoulder season when nights are getting down to zero in an unheated tunnel, my honest advice would be you're actually further ahead to pull those tomatoes out and replace that crop with cold hardy crops.
Mm.
Because evenings at 0 and an unheated tunnel, they're going to start dying back. So you want to just kind of crop them out and aim for your, like, top them a few weeks ahead of those temperatures. So you're maxing out your yields. They're going to stress out. You're going to overproduce. You harvest off, and then I would clear them out and get cold hardy crops in.
Another,
Okay.
if you want to be precise about it, and then
Fair.
I think we should move on. But
Yeah.
if you put a sensor in your greenhouse, so it can be, there's setup with thermometer you can use as well. But if you put a sensor in there and you track what's the difference between putting the wiggle wire and not putting it, I think that could help you take a decision as well, if it's really worth putting the wiggle wire, because I think just that you can save a lot of time if it's not worth it, which I suspect it is, but you seem not to think so. So maybe that can help see for sure. Good. I hope we helped a bit.
Yeah. Me too. I understand the limitations there.
Yeah. If you have more questions, and if we see the skirt, Luke, help me remember talking about, like, pointing it out.
Yeah.
All right. So going back to another example, I think is the last one from the FQT farm. This year they're working on a project to, like, the goal was to not have anyone going to the farm during the weekend. So now they're having employees going to the farm, and they have like long weeks of work. So they wanted to just not need to go to the farm. And there are kind of a few things that were getting in the way. First one, well, automating greenhouses, it was already done for them, so that wasn't a problem. Second thing was automating the nursery, the irrigation in the nursery. That's what was missing, and the field irrigation as well for like these hot summer days. So that's part of what they wanted to automate on their farm. And the reason for that is because they calculated that it could save 800. It could save 800 hours by just not having to think about the irrigation in the greenhouse, in the nursery, and not having to go to the farm during the weekend to do it. So that's a lot of time that you can save. And maybe the irrigation of the nursery won't be as good than if you do it by hand, but still, like, the sheer amount of time you save there can make it worth the small loss in germination. Second thing, we talked about interruptions. 4 interruptions a day that they can save. So that was a big win for them. And no weekend farm duty, so a happy staff. I saw this chat moving. When I use the sensor system, the ability to view the greenhouse temperature history and use that when making sense of my own observation on plants' behavior was very cool from a data collection perspective. My help with decision-making around the wiggle wire. Okay. Yeah, and about the wall inflation and stuff, NG, if you have questions, you have my email at the end of the presentation. You can write me. All right, so that's an example of how you can have an impact on your farm, not saving like a few minutes here and there, but really just eliminating something that you have to think about. And of course, when you automate it, it's not, I don't think about it ever again. You need to make sure things are working properly, but you're always on the farm. So just, it's easier to check once in a while than just having constantly think about it. So that's what I think was interesting there. And there are many stories about it. Like for the field, there's Scott at the FAO conference this fall that was talking about how it's helped him just saving, I think he said 1 hour per day, so 180 hours per season. And that's for him, that was irrigating the field that was taking a lot of time. So that's what he automated. And Luke, I was asking you how much time you saved on your farm, and you said that. Well, what do you say? Like automating, what has been the impact for you?
I think, yeah, we were laughing again. It was while we were talking about the distractions. It's like, I think up to 6 hours a week for sure. So that would be close to 180 as well if you do it 30 weeks between the trips of rolling up sides and irrigation as well.
And the second question I have, where do you put that time? What do you do with that time that you save?
Creating funny reels on Instagram. No, I'm just kidding.
I almost put something from Instagram on in the presentation because I thought I wanted to make that joke too, but I couldn't put the video there.
No, no. It goes. I mean, it just makes. That's a tough question, but it goes elsewhere. That is more useful when you're talking about the lean farm. Like, obviously, just if you can polish up the things that aren't bringing you value and keep focused, it's almost twofold in the benefits.
Yeah, I found that like most farmers struggle to make their sales. Well, most farmers, a lot of farmers I'm talking to, like selling is kind of a place where it's not the most sexy one where people want to spend their time. They want to grow food, right? They want to sell. And I feel like that's not your case. I was suspecting that maybe it was because you're doing some online content for to sell your thing. And at the same time, it's what you were saying earlier, that adding the plant sale to your farm was a new thing this year, and that was a good success, right?
Yeah, we absolutely love that. And yeah, we've always had the mindset of sell first. Like, we've always sold all the vegetables we grow and have the issue of growing into our sales, which is good and bad. But we've loved the plant sale, and yeah, thank you for sharing our poster. That's a good one.
Yep. Yeah, I was looking at your Instagram and Facebook account, and there's like I see that you put a lot of effort into it. So I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I wanted to put it out.
Yeah, no, I agree. It does help us. It gives us time to promote as well as market. Yeah.
Good. So that was kind of how you can save time during the week, more or less depending on your situation. But on our days, what people typically tell us, and when they have more greenhouses, that increases because just the irrigation is a big part of it, and rolling up and down also. So goes to the third benefits, which is maybe a bit more advanced, I'd say, because it's less obvious where the impact you can have and really how much you can get. So I tried to put some numbers of people, what they've told me, and Luke, again, jump in with whatever you can to kind of give an idea of the impact it had for you. I throw you the ball a few times in there, but
yeah, sure.
I said triple the income. Well, I'm gonna say it, but there's many reasons you can increase your income when you automate your greenhouse. If you want to triple it, automating is not enough, but it's you need to automate the greenhouse climate, because the climate is a big part of what your plants need to be able to grow as much as possible, to be able to grow to their potential. And you can have a consistent climate if you're not automated, because you would need to be constantly there making decisions that it just doesn't make sense. So what can you hope to get? Here we have Elizabeth, which is one of our really good customers who gets really good results. I don't know your numbers, Luke. Maybe you'd be better than that. But
Close.
For her,
Close, yeah.
Oh, congrats.
Ours are, yeah.
I think that's kind of a good, like, for 3 season, like one of the biggest yields that I've heard for small scale farming, like for 300 by 30 by 100 greenhouse. Elizabeth is getting like between 40 and 50 every year, 50 grand. So that's not just tomatoes. That's like a varied like mix of many crops. And what we see is that when we look at the statistics, the average small scale grower get, like in tomatoes, so let's just talk about tomatoes, they grow about like 10 kilos per square meter. And that's a very far cry from what the industrial greenhouses are managed to do. And there's that shows the potential of the plants we use. But of course, we, like small farmers, don't have the same equipment to do the same thing. We don't do hydroponic stuff, and so having the same result may be a high expectation. But when we look at what Elizabeth is getting, there's still a big opportunity that you can get by optimizing the climate in the greenhouse, and that's kind of like a big part. NG, you wanted to to get better results with your tomatoes. I'm gonna try to give you a few tips here, but it's still like high level. So if you have more precise questions, just ask them or email me later. That's fine. But the main part is that you need consistency, uniformity with your climate, with the conditions that you give your plants. And one of the interesting part is that if you have a greenhouse full of tomatoes, like 30 by 100, if you increase your yield by just 1 kilogram, it represents something like $2,000. So like the time you spend in optimizing what you do, if you heat your greenhouse to get better results, it can like you can have a big impact on your bottom line as well. If you have the market to sell it, of course. If you don't, just don't overproduce. It's not going to help you. But if you can sell more tomatoes or more vegetables, like a small increase and small action can get you a big result. And Luke, when I asked you what was the impact on your yields, you talked about the longer season. So for you, that's how you increase your yields, right?
Yeah, I think what we were touching on was not just yields, but what's really nice about the longer season is the fact that that's all profit at that point. Because if you extend your season by a month, like 2 weeks on the front, 2 weeks on the back, that's work you're doing anyways. You're gonna plant those tomatoes, you're gonna trellis those tomatoes. The only added work, I guess, is irrigation, because if we're talking about the sides being automated, it should maybe a little bit of trellising is the only additional work. So those added weeks are literally just all profit off of the same amount of effort for the most part. So I think that's really where you're getting into higher, not just gross, but higher net off of the actual crop itself.
And just to link it up, how come you managed to get longer season? Like,
oh yes,
is it the automation that may help you with that, or what was the difference for you?
Yes, like prior to having automation, we were dealing with the mold issues. Like we were always seeing, and I believe that was because of the humidity swings. I know that can cause really bad issues with I can't even identify the type, but I think it was a combination of powdery mildew and the down, like the dark one, that just kind of the whole plant just shrivels.
I think my next picture is it leaf mold?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the black leaf mold. That's it. Yeah. That's the one that just kind of, once it's in there, it just kind of like just goes. And so we were losing, you put in all this effort, and then like they would be straggling, but they're not nearly as productive as they should be by the end of the season. So we would kind of, if you're calling it a marathon, you're sort of just limping to the finish line instead of sprinting.
Yeah. And what did you do to change that? Like what made the change?
So definitely just the addition of the furnace and the roll-up sides, because then what we're talking about is the conditioning in the morning. So on the back end, Orisha knows to raise it like not more than 1 degree Celsius per hour, which is like preconditioning your plants. Basically, they wake up nice and calm, and like if you that's in
the ramp up, like the temperature.
That's called the ramp up. Yeah,
I think people call it that.
So that's one way, and then also the roll-up sides controlling the humidity. And I love that the Orisha has the when you have a furnace programmed in with it, it has the dehumidification. So the sides roll up, it kicks on, and that's going to stop those spikes from coming through.
Yeah, and that was the next picture. It's another farmer who gave them to me, but it's the leaf mold you were talking about, I believe.
It looks like it's from one of my greenhouses.
No.
I've seen that.
Yeah. Okay. So that's leaf mold, and are you grafting your plants? Because I know there's some graft roots that you can use that are resistant to leaf mold.
We do graft. Yeah, we do.
So that can be an option if you don't want to dehumidify or automate or whatever. Grafting can also be an option to prevent these. I don't know how effective it is. I think they're pretty good, but I'm not sure 100%. But what we do is the dehumidification with the automation. So you mentioned heating for it, and heating really will help dehumidifying, but it's not necessary. During fall and spring, you can get good results dehumidifying without heating. During the summer, it's harder though, but still, that works. And the difference here between that picture and this one, it's the same greenhouse, same time of the year, which was July. And the difference was just like 2 clicks to set up a dehumidification program. And as you can see, like first, it's way better on the right side, but there's still, it's not perfect. But most people claim that maybe 90-95% of the disease problem is solved with the dehumidification. And most people have told me that have heating, so I don't have that much data without heating. But in the fall, during fall and spring, because it's cold outside, the dehumidification is easier. So from what I see, it looks better. I don't know the impact on the plant, but on the humidity level, it helps. And what about you, Luke? Did you remove completely the problem with the humidification, or do you still have small issues?
We saw some spots, but it was a massive difference and not as spread, like as thorough. It was more just like, it seemed like an area, and then also maybe even, it's hard to tell if it's just the area or it's the varietal in that area, but it seemed to be way more contained and like our harvests were lasting way longer and sustained.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, glad to hear that it had a good impact on you.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, I'm gonna talk a bit later about how you can set that up. But let's go back to you, Luke. I think you already mentioned that, like the quality of your transplant in the nursery.
Yeah.
So
I just want to pop in for one second. I'm aware we had to start significantly later than planned because of a technical error on our part on the EFAO team, which again, yep. I'm very sorry about. But we are 5 minutes away from the planned end time. If you want to talk for longer and if people are interested in staying for longer, I'm very happy to make that work. But I also want to recognize you only, planned to be here until 8:30 and people might need to go. So just a bit of a time check on that. I'm easy and flexible based on what everybody wants to do.
Okay, I suggest like a 5 seconds poll, like everyone write yes if you want to keep going later, or just no if you want to leave at 8:30, and we'll try to make the most out of these 5 minutes.
Okay, put in the chat yes if you want to stay a little bit longer and finish out the full content, and no if you're ready to get out of here at 8:30. But while that comes in, just please keep going. I don't want to take too much of your time.
I'm good to keep going.
All right. So I'll keep going. If someone else go, we won't take offense. That's good. So basically, I'm gonna maybe speed up a bit, but what we want to do with our greenhouse is to convert as much light as possible into tomatoes, into vegetables, because the limiting factor we have on small farms is typically the light that we get from the sun, and especially in northern climate, we don't get as much light for the whole season. So the more efficient we are at converting light into tomatoes, the better the result we're going to get on the quality, on the yield amount as well. And what can make a difference, basically, it's avoiding temperature extremes, avoiding fungus level humidity. So let's say above 80%. Condensation is bad for diseases as well. Lack of water, too much water. Nothing here is really surprising. But where you can have where you can have an impact is these growth slower that you want to avoid. And one of them is the cold shock. So when like cold air goes into the greenhouse and hits the plant directly, then your plant is going to turn into what I call protection mode, which kind of just make it stop photosynthesizing. So it stop growth, basically. So you want to avoid that. And second one, humidity shock. When it's too dry in the greenhouse, the plant would kind of go into protection mode to keep its water, so no growth there either. Lack of water, if you're not irrigating well enough, then it goes into protection mode, and that protection mode can last for a few hours. So if you're 5 minutes too late, then you can lose 2 hours or more of growth. So at the end of the year, that compounds, and that can have a big impact on what you can get out of your greenhouse. And then there's the imbalance of the plant. If your plant goes too unbalanced on vegetative side or generative side, then it's going to struggle to first stay healthy. It's going to be more prone to diseases, and then it's not going to produce as much as you'd like. And this is all quite hard to keep track of, especially if you do it by hand. You have no way of keeping track of this. So you need that consistency in these tools that will allow you to prevent these. And many things, do you have time to keep track of all that? Like, obviously, no, it's barely possible. But it's possible to do it when you have the tool that does it for you. So that's where you can have an impact in your greenhouse as well. And I'm going to go quickly on you this time, Luke, but you said that the growing cucumber, well, quickly, what were you talking about when you were talking about your cucumbers and the impact it had for you?
Yeah, I think it was just taking the step to grow them well. Like you kind of need to take that next step to be able to grow them to their needs, because the soil temperature has to be a certain way, and also the roll-up sides, like controlling humidity again. So for us to take that step to offer sort of like a culinary something comparable to the grocery store to chefs, we had to take this step. And so now we essentially have a new product. It's different than a field cucumber. You have this sort of premium, either the mini cucumbers or the English cucumbers, and we sell a ton at market, a ton to chefs, and they're amazing in our CSA. So it's just without the automation, it wouldn't have been possible.
Cool. I'm really always happy to hear that kind of story.
Yeah, like it's and like I say, it's a different product, like because you can't really achieve it without that.
Mm-hmm. And there's the heat probably that helped you as well.
How'd you get that one? No, that's cute.
Yeah, you told me I can take everything I want from the
I was just joking.
I found that one was really cute, so
Yeah.
I put it back. So I'm gonna skip it though because we're on tight schedule. But the idea here is that what we see outside of Quebec is that people have way more greenhouses than we see in Quebec, and the reason for that is that most people get way less out of a greenhouse than somewhere else. So before adding a new greenhouse at like 50 grand or something, think about the other options where you can maybe get more of what you need for less money, for less time, and that can maybe free you some time. Because once again, if you can get to increase these tomato yields or the quality of the tomatoes that you can sell or extend the season, 1 kilogram per square meter over the season is still around 2,000 in sales. So you can have a big impact without having to buy a new greenhouse, spend the time to install a new greenhouse, and put in all the time to maintain that new greenhouse. So that's kind of the bottom line if we want to keep it simple. And here, we work with a farmer that made a huge change in his greenhouse with the income you get from it. And there's a lot of tricks that we ask him to write in an ebook. And it's available on that website if you're interested. And most of it are free stuff, like finding the right density for your greenhouse. As you can see on the picture here, you don't have like a lot of space that is wasted, because space in the greenhouse is quite expensive, especially if you heat it. But if you increase the density as much as possible without going too much so that the light don't reach the plants, you can, like, out of $1 of propane, you can get way more tomatoes. Yeah, so you can go check out the ebook if you're interested. I highly recommend it. So that was the third benefits, and then I'm going to jump into what you can do. Like, what are the first steps that you can get into that are to get started simply with automation, like greenhouse automation, irrigation. I'm more going to talk about greenhouse automation in there. And once again, if you need something more, just ask your question. That will help me direct it towards what's more interesting for you. So how to get started? There's many ways, there's many products, there's many things you can do. What I'm going to focus on and what is the easiest path towards like getting results, or what is the low-hanging fruit. And for that, we develop a kit with Orisha to find what will get you there. And basically the idea is like securing the crops, which is very awesome because that gets you all that peace of mind all that ability to forget about the greenhouse and just think about it when it's needed, then how you can save all that time doing back and forth to the greenhouse, and realize that when you do your temperature management, the control you would see that is going to be done is going to be way more than what you would do normally, and you're going to see the result in the quality of your vegetables. And how you can get started simply, because you can automate so many things, and they not all have the same value, and they're not as easy to install, but this is really simple to get started with. So this is the motor that goes at where your crank typically is for your roll-ups. And with that, like the kit basically includes like all the equipment, like the automation equipment. So you can have like the sensors, the actuators, and where you're going to plug in your motors. Then the app that is accessible remotely if you have an internet access. And as we mentioned with Romina earlier, there's many ways to get access to internet, even if internet is not in the greenhouse, not necessary. Then the necessary hardware, we didn't have that in before, and you needed to go find the motor somewhere, make sure it's compatible. So now we included everything, and the alert subscription, all included in one package. And I checked with the team to make sure before calling that, but everything is included down to the screw to screw it to the panel. So like, the idea is to make it as simple as possible, because that's a question that folks ask me most of the time. They see it as a big project. You say, okay, I need to plan a lot of time for this, and often they postpone it, and then maybe they're beating themselves up afterwards.
And I see your segue.
Okay, so yeah, what was your experience, Luke?
He's poking fun at me because I made the mistake of telling one of the crew at Orisha that I left my automatic roll-up sides after getting Orisha. I left them in the barn for a couple of months, thinking it was going to be like a big 2-day task in the middle of the season, which I didn't have. And then once I finally got around to it, it took like 2 hours, maybe. Like, it's so straightforward. It was so that's the story. It's very easy, and it's not worth delaying.
Yeah, and like I find it funny that when you told me that, but you're really not alone. Like, most people do it, and I think it's on our part. We should make things appear simpler, and that's what we're working on right now, so that people don't get intimidated thinking it's going to take a lot of time. And we really want it to be easy, right? So we made a plan, the schematics, so you can follow easily what you need to do. I'm kidding. What you need basically is just, you need an electrical outlet. You need about 2 hours. Did I put something? No, I didn't put anything about the Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is not required. It will allow you to have the alerts call you in case of a problem. But if you lose internet access, or if you don't have it, it's still going to work. It's still going to help you. You're just not going to be able to see remotely what's happening. So yeah, easy to install. It's just plugging wires and a little bit of piping. And here, that's what it looks like. And that's the place I wanted to call for your story, Luke, but we went about earlier. So it's like putting the pipe there is the hardest part. The rest is just, you take the wires, you plug it into the unit, and that's it. And then what about the daily use of it? We try to make it as easy as possible. And here's the example. You just, with 2 clicks, you can have a program set up for tomatoes. And 2 more clicks, and you have the humidification. And if you need to adjust some things later, it's easy to do. So it's just, don't be intimidated by the fact that it's a technological tool. You need to learn stuff. We have Fred, who's taking time with farmers when they install it to show them around, so that you can take advantage of it. But you often don't need it, because you set up and you can forget about it. You can still go and try to optimize the results, but you don't need to. You're still going to get results. And the idea is that you don't need to, like what I was saying earlier, you don't need to figure out what's the best way to configure the thing, because every day is different. One day is sunny, one day it's rainy, and doesn't need to do the same thing. It shouldn't do the same thing, the same actions, but the system will figure that out for you and keep it into the target line, like the target zone, which is like the yellowish band here. This is a heated greenhouse. It doesn't have to be heated. It's just that the temperature won't stay up, of course, if it's not heated. And for the dehumidification, same thing. It's kind of hard to balance humidity and temperature, and finding ways of, like, the physics of it is quite complex. So the idea is that we figured it out so that you don't have to. It's done for you. And then that's new projects that we started to develop, is like the balance of the plant, how you can optimize the growth of your plant. And it helps tuning if your plant is going too weak, if it's going too strong, and not putting the energy at the right place. It's kind of hard, the whole plant science of it, the whole thermodynamics of the greenhouse, so you can adapt that. So the idea is that we give you a simple interface where you can adjust where your plants are, and the climate and the conditions of the greenhouse is going to follow what you need to be done. And for this, if you're not heating, it's not as powerful, it's not as useful. But if you want to get into having better results, and you're ready to invest in heating because you have a market for more tomatoes or more whatever you're growing, then that can be a tool that can help you, like, to simply get started with the crop steering aspect of growing in greenhouses. And a big part of all that is technology is always a question that comes up, and we want to develop the best tool, but it's never going to be perfect because the universe is against us. But so we have a team that's there to answer questions. And Luke, you had a slide on that on the last presentation you made, so I just steal it to hear about what has been your experience installing it, and would you recommend it to folks?
Yeah, no, I think the greatest barrier to people, and I'm sure a lot of people here can relate to that, is I found it really intimidating. It's just a big undertaking, and when you're committing to do automation immediately, just like me being scared of the big task of doing the roll-up sides and then being surprised by it not taking as long, there's a lot of costs associated with automation, a lot of learning required, and a lot of lessons to be learned. But I think that it's extremely easy when you take it in stride. And what Orisha offers is that it can be steps, like you said, the starter pack, roll up sides first. And that's what I would have done in hindsight. We actually did the furnace first and the roll up side second, just to try to extend our season, which wasn't necessarily the smart way. But to go back to your question, I just wanted to sort of say that it's much less intimidating than I think it needs to be. And I think that's a huge hurdle for people. So I wanted to have a chance to say that. But to back to your question, then once we had done it, like, I still remember that day sitting in there and I just had all this stuff unpacked, but getting on with Fred and him just walking me through it. And then also just, you guys are always on the phone. And again, I'm happy to provide this feedback to people because I sincerely believe in the product and the quality of your guys' service. Like, I'm literally texting Fred sometimes. One time I FaceTimed him because we were actually setting up the sensors for my irrigation, and he had to help me out, and we were just FaceTiming to make sure it was good. And that's literally, what could you ask for?
Yes. So thank you for the feedback, because I think that service part that is important, because, like, even though we try to make it as simple as possible, there's always a question that comes up. And when you're in a rush, because we're often in a rush on the farm, that's part of making things simple, is having someone that can answer your questions.
And typically it's urgent. Yeah. Like, typically those things are urgent. Like, it's always having a same day answer is invaluable. So it's really, really incredible. It really is.
Yeah, so that's part of what I think is interesting. And if you're looking for automation somewhere else, that's fine. But try to see if you're going to have help with it, because we see how complicated it can be. And even though we're working on making things simple all the time, there's still questions. And I think that's what people like a lot, is having answers quickly. So whoever you're working with, look for that. And with that package I was talking about, like, to get started, the idea is to leave the stress to us. We're looking on ways that we can just make it as easy as possible all the time. And the idea is, here we want to protect your cash flow. You don't want to invest like a lot of money without finding the value in it. Someone said that earlier in the presentation, how not to invest a lot of money in something that's not going to worth it. That's what we try to address here. So no commitment, you stop paying if you don't want it. If electronics dies, it happens, unfortunately. You get replacement for free. And so it includes that security, hardware for automation, motors, app, that, and the team. And it's $115 a month. So people were asking how much it is. And so that will get you the side rollups, the monitoring, the alerts, and the peace of mind that comes with it. So I hope it's worth it. Someone told me last time I put on the wrong price, and someone told me, "Oh, doesn't matter. It's just 6 hours of work. It's worth it anyway." And I think that's the way of seeing it. I know like a lot of folks don't pay themselves a wage. If you have an employee do that kind of thing, if you do it and you want to get back the time, try to see, is it worth $115? And if you want to try it and you don't, it's not bringing you the value that you think it should, you can always send it back. There's no commitment, as I was saying earlier. So that the idea here is to put as less risk, to make it as risk-free as possible for you guys. So that's, I think, the simplest way you can get into automation right now. I think there's a question. It's a yearly plan that's divided in months so that you don't have to pay it up front. It's kind of the opposite of the CSA basket. Or you can pay it once a year if you prefer that.
Is there an option like a rent to buy kind of situation?
Yeah, you can buy it up front or you can buy it later. But if you, I don't know who asked the question earlier. I don't want to put money. I'm not sure it's going to be worth it. If you buy it up front, then it's a typical purchase. Does that answer your question, Romina? I think was Romina who asked it.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, cool. Still struggling with the two screens. All right, so to sum up, the benefits that you can get, it's the one that we hear the most often is the peace of mind that people want, the quality of life, the idea of not being tied up to the farm. If you're using wiggle wires, there's maybe a case to be explored there. But that's one aspect of hopefully you can get. And if it's not the roll-up, maybe it's the irrigation that's going to be worth it for you. But all the interruptions and all the space it takes in your mind, every place you can find a cheaper way of doing it than your time, than your employees' time, try to take advantage of it. And I talked about greenhouse automation today, but automation can go larger than that. And sometimes it's just way of payments. If you have to spend a lot of time collecting your customers, then maybe a way to pay by credit card and paying 3% is not that much comparing to your time. So it's all these ideas here where you can save all time and all the space in your head. And then if you want to go further, there's all these yield thing. And we have a blog also. I think these are older articles, but on how you can do a crop, like basic crop steering using the temperature average to do it. And if you're automating, there's a lot of things that's going to come with it. There's a lot of different systems. Obviously, I think ours is the best, but you can explore other options as well. And but you have free things like ramping up that you cannot do as a human, but the machine can do quite easily. That would prevent condensation, so diseases and stuff like that. There's a lot of things you can get if you're interested into improving your yields. And I didn't want to geek too much into this presentation, but if you're interested, just email me. It's going to be a pleasure to answer you. And once again, I wanted to remember that it's not that hard to get started. Just make sure you have someone that can help you, not just buy a product without help. That's what I would recommend here. So last bit of the presentation, Luke, what would you say to someone that is not automated? Do you have any tip, any like places where you shouldn't do it, or whatever you think is useful?
All right, that's a good one. I think Well, someone said it earlier. They said they felt like they were there. I think you know when you're there. Like I think you've established probably confidence in your markets, confidence in your growing, and maybe you have the economic means, whether it be you can see the ROI on taking a loan or whatever. But I think that's the fundamental first step, is just to see the potential for growth, like whether it be through sales markets, like I say, and then the desire to sort of take that next step. It is just a next step, and I think it's worth it. Like I think we touched on it. The number one thing is it's less intimidating than you think. And what's great about Orisha is you can sort of take it in stride. You get your system, you get the support, and then you sort of start with roll up sides. Then you can add other features as you go. And that's the beauty. So I think that wasn't something mentioned, but they're sort of unlocked. You get, and that's the beauty of sort of not paying upfront. Like with an iGrow, I think it's anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 for the unit upfront, and that's not really attainable for a lot of people. So this is a great introductory, and I don't mean it as an introductory to step to something different, but just to get going with automation. I would suggest it. And we were talking about yields, like you said hours of labor. But we also have to tie back to before, where we were talking about just yields in general, like the person making 40 grand off of a greenhouse. You can take a 30 by 100 greenhouse that's maybe making 20,000 and double it quite easily just by adding automation.
All right. I think that wraps it up. There was the ebook again. I recommend if you're interested in increasing the yields in your greenhouse, or just how to cram more stuff in to get more stuff out. We recommend it. If you want just to leave your email, I can email it to you, or you can go on the website. It's available there. So I think farming can be easier, and if we can take the options, the tools that we have to save all the space all the time and space that it takes in our head, all these little things, and convert it into like automated SOPs, or just organizing the farm better, we're gonna create space for more projects and to go towards the ideal farm that we want to have. Because sometimes like automation is not the ideal farm we want to have, but it's just a stepping stone to create the space to get there. So thank you, Luke, for accepting to talk about your experience. I hope you guys are leaving with at least one bit of information that will have a change on your farm. If I guess we can take questions, I'm not sure, but I want to end on Sophie. You're forgiven for the email, like having the wrong link for the presentation.
Yeah, we'll try to figure out what happened, but it's in the past. You've all been very accommodating, and for the folks who weren't able to join us on time, they will get an edited recording that takes out all of our earlier panic that nobody needs to witness. But I think we're getting late in people's evening, and people had a lot of opportunities to ask questions throughout, and you've generously invited people to email you if they want to follow up. So I think we should end with a big thank you to Guillaume and to Luke. And a good night. And thank you everyone for spending your time learning with us this evening. You'll receive a post-event follow-up in the next week or so with some more resources and links and the recording as well, if you're curious to revisit anything we talked about tonight.
Thanks for joining, everyone.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Gil. Thanks, Sophie.
Thanks. Good night.
Good night.